Hi guys, Olive here today to bring you part 2 of my May book haul. I'm going to be starting out with a historical fiction that has to do with Russia and Eastern Europe. Then I'm going to move into general nonfiction and conclude with nonfiction that deals with Russia and Eastern Europe. The first book I'd like to show you is The True Memoirs of Little Kay by Adrienne Sharp. I've wanted to read this book for forever. This is about a ballerina in Imperial Russia named Matilda Kshasinska, who was a real ballerina. She was involved with Nicholas II before he was married to Alexandra. I read her memoir about 3 years ago, so I've been really interested to read this novelization of her life. I'll be interested to compare and contrast between the two stories. A lot of the books in this portion of the haul came from Steve at Open Letters Monthly and over at his new booktube channel, Steve Donahue. The first I'd like to show you is Voroshilovgrad by Serhiy Zhadan. This is a book translated from Ukrainian. This is about a city-dwelling executive who goes back to his rural home to take over his brother's gas station after his brother has mysteriously disappeared. Another book that Steve sent me is Forbidden Love in St. Petersburg. This is by Mishka Ben David. This is a political thriller with a little bit of romance set in St. Petersburg, and it's totally up my alley. This next one is one I picked up myself. It's called The Madonnas of Leningrad by Deborah Dean. I've actually already read this one. I read it a few years back and I really enjoyed it, so I wanted to have it in hard copy when I saw it at a used bookstore. This is historical fiction set during the siege of Leningrad. It is about a woman who works at the Hermitage who is trying to protect the artwork during the siege. The book kind of jumps around in time. I found it very powerful and I'm really happy I have a copy so I can reread it sometime soon. Now into some of the general nonfiction. I picked up Jane Austen, A Life by Claire Tomalin. This is clearly a biography of Jane Austen's life. I've been getting into Jane Austen's work. I haven't loved all of it, but I have found her very, very interesting as a person. I'm very curious to hear about what her life was like. I hear it was much less idyllic than her novels. So I'll be excited to read a little bit more about it. And then along kind of similar lines is Among the Janeites, A Journey Through the World of Jane Austen Fandom by Deborah Yaff. I feel like this one is pretty self-explanatory in examining the immense fandom behind Jane Austen's works. Another one I picked up was Swoon, Great Seducers and Why Women Love Them. This is by Betsy Priolu. This is a book about history's greatest ladies' men and why women seem to be attracted to them. These guys aren't the typical stereotypes like studs, players, or moguls, but it is said that they do share some unusual characteristics, so I'll be interested to see what those are. There is also a female counterpart to this book called Seductress, so if I ever see that one, I will probably be picking that one up as well. I couldn't resist this next one. It's called Lip Service. Smiles in Life, Death, Trust, Lies, Work, Memory, Sex, and Politics by Marianne LaFrance. This is a microhistory dissecting the body language and the science behind the human smile. It says that LaFrance shows how the smile says much more than we realize or care to admit. Not just cheerful expressions, smiles are social acts with serious consequences. I'm just really into microhistories and understanding human behavior, so this is definitely one that I want to get to sooner rather than later. Next is Dreaming in Hindi, Coming Awake in Another Language by Karen Russell Rich. This is a memoir about a journalist who goes to India and throws herself into the cultural experience of living there and the process of learning Hindi. It combines stories of her experience and then also intertwines the science behind language learning. Being someone who has studied abroad, being someone who is interested in language and wants to learn a large variety of different languages, this just totally spoke to me. I'm going to be very interested to hear about her experiences with learning language and learning a new culture, and I'll be interested to see the ways in which it paralleled my own experience. This next one is another memoir. It's called The Hemingway Book Club of Kosovo by Paula Huntley. This is about a woman who moves to Kosovo with her husband, who is in charge of reforming the legal system there. While they lived there, she began teaching English to a group of students. She decided to start an American-style book club with these students, and this is a memoir of that time she spent with them. Most of these next books came from Steve again, and I am so excited about all of them, especially this first one. It's called The Ukrainian and Russian Notebooks, Life and Death Under Soviet Rule by the graphic novelist Igor. So this is a graphic novel with really amazing art, and it covers two different topics. The first topic is the assassination of the Russian journalist Anna Politkovskaya, and the second is the forced famine in Ukraine. I know this one is going to be very hard to read as these are very difficult subjects, but I am so interested to see the way that Igor is going to take on these really hard topics in graphic novel form. Next is How Not to Network a Nation: The Uneasy History of the Soviet Internet by Benjamin Peters. This is the story of how and why the Soviet version of the internet failed while its American counterpart succeeded. Then there is Classics for the Masses: Shaping Soviet Musical Identity Under Lenin and Stalin by Pauline Fairclough. I feel like a lot of these titles speak for themselves. Next is Inferno in Chechnya: The Russian Chechen Wars, the Al-Qaeda Myth, and the Boston Marathon Bombings by Brian Glenn Williams. I have to admit I haven't read a ton about Chechnya. I've only read some, and I would like to read more, so I'm sure this will help. Steve also sent me Black Wind, White Snow: The Rise of Russia's New Nationalism by Charles Clover. Based on extensive research and dozens of interviews with Putin's closest advisors, this quietly explosive story will be essential reading for anyone concerned with Russia's past century and its future. I am definitely concerned about both of those things, so I suppose I need to read this. Then I meant to put this in the fiction section, but it ended up here instead. It's the Penguin Book of Russian Poetry. I don't read much poetry, let alone Russian poetry, but I think because this gives a good sampling of a lot of different Russian poets, that this will be a good place to start for me. And this last one is one that I did by myself. It's called Between East and West: The Origins of Modern Russia, 862 to 1953 by R.D. Charks. It says it emphasizes three central themes: that autocracy has played a dominant role throughout all of Russian history, that serfdom is the fabric of Russia's social history, and that, more so now than ever before, it is of paramount importance to recognize Russia's present regime under Putin and Medvedev as the latest phase in a long history of authoritarian leadership and oppression. This book would have been really helpful when I wrote my honors thesis, which focused on the cultural roots of Russian autocracy. I am certainly going to be fascinated going through this book, and probably somewhat angry that I didn't have this book to back up my arguments back then. So that was the more scholarly section of this book haul, I suppose. If you've read any of the books that I showed or are interested in any of them, please let me know in the comments section down below. If you want to reach me anywhere else on social media, all links are in the description box. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.